couple things you want to remember when you're choosing a cast iron intake manifold for especially a small block Chevrolet is, number one, get the best intake manifold you can on the motor. The intake manifold on a small block Chevy makes a huge difference. The difference between a stock intake and a modified intake can easily be 30-35 horsepower if you go from a stock to a fully modified intake manifold. I'd like you to see a better intake manifold and maybe a little less porting on the cylinder heads. Once the heads are mechanically sound, that's going to get you further, make you run up front faster, quicker than the opposite way. Of course, cylinder head work is important, but don't do a lot of work to your cylinder heads and then run a stock cast iron intake. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. So these are the three offerings that we have in the way of cast iron two-barrel intake manifolds. So if you go ahead and you look at the intake manifolds, on the outside they all look identical. Okay? The difference is one of them is an acid ported intake manifold, the other one is a stage 1 ported, which is about 80% ported, and one of them is a fully modified intake. From the outside you can't see nothing. They look identical. Internally, they are quite a bit different. So what intake manifold you choose really depends on your track rules and your inspection procedure and so on and so forth. This one here is an acid ported intake manifold. This intake is absolutely stock externally. If you turn it over, the port openings are going to be stock. Very difficult to detect. This is going to be about a 5 to a 10 horsepower gain. Now, stage 1 intake manifold is about 80% ported. This one is ported underneath the carburetor in the plenum area. Also spend some time on the CNC machine getting ported. And then after we do all the porting to the port openings, we go ahead and we shot peen the port openings so they look pretty stock. We don't make the port openings any bigger than stock. So most of the time these are going on stock double hum type heads or EQ heads or SR heads, something along those lines. So the port openings are basically stock. And when we take this intake manifold to trade shows and we have it, belly up, people look at it and they say, okay, what was done to this? Where's the modified one? Because they're trained that a ported intake has to have large port openings and be shiny. Well, that's not a very wise thing to do. We want to keep them small, and we shot peen them, so we put some color back in it. So there's a very strong resemblance to a stock intake manifold. Now the ultimate intake manifold in both 2-barrel and 4-barrel versions would be the fully modified intake, which is what this is. And this is the one that has had the holes bored in it. 2 holes on the top, 2 on the bottom. We don't show this intake very often for obvious reasons. But this intake manifold is going to be the ultimate in 2-barrel intake manifold performance. So get the best intake manifold you can on your race motor if you want to run up front, and if you want to get a little bit more detailed as far as how we figured out the airflow numbers on these and how we flow tested intake manifolds. We do have a flow bench video. It's video number 10 that shows a special fixture that we made many years ago to flow test these intake manifolds when we were developing them. And over the course of the last bunch of years, I probably flow tested 200 or 300 stock and modified intake manifolds with that particular fixture. So again, intake manifolds very critical to small block Chevrolets and other applications where you're running a stock type intake manifold. Number 1 criteria is get the best intake manifold you can on the motor, period.